So as Ron was saying, I'm gonna talk about the research development and innovation initiative that the CSIR is undertaking in the area of medical devices and diagnostics. So I'll quickly, in terms of the outline of the presentation, some of the stuff Tony has already covered quite extensively, so I might go through some of the slides quickly. So I'll start by looking at the overview of the South African medical device industry, and then look at the challenges facing the South African medical device industry, just to provide a bit of a context into sort of the work that the CSIR is doing to address those challenges. So this slide sort of gives the overview of the medical device industry, just looking at key ratios. The South African medical device industry is a 16.9 billion rand industry, and it sort of takes about 4.2% of the South African health expenditure, and it only contributes about 0.4% to the GDP. And it actually imports, as the report done by BMI last year shows that it actually now importing over 94% of the products we use in the country. And it's really a small, the South African medical device industry is really a small player in the global medical device industry, only contributing about 0.3% of an almost $350 billion global market. And it currently employs over 20,000 people directly and indirectly. And then in sort of looking at the general company composition, mainly looking at companies that actually manufacture and not distribute here, like Tony was saying, the number is quite, depending on how you look at it, the number can be 150 to 500. So here you sort of got an estimate of companies that do manufacturing. So you have about 30 multinational companies and 22 local manufacturers, and they generally tend to employ less than 50 people, with the multinational employing obviously more people, and the local manufacturer less because of just the size of the companies. So in terms of looking, and Tony touched quite extensively on this, especially on the last point that I'll touch on this presentation. So there's a couple of studies that were actually conducted. In 2014, Deloitte released a report that was initiated, a report of a study that was initiated by DTI, looking at actually develop like a strategy, what DTI can do in terms of strategy to assist the medical device challenges. And I think in 2015, Medtronic and PAF did a similar study, also looking at what can be done to sort of stimulate the medical device sector in South Africa. And the three key challenges that were found sort of by the two reports were that there's generally a lack of infrastructure and skill in the entire value chain of the industry, from actually your research all the way to manufacturing. And there's generally very high input costs, such as your material and labor. Material, the reason being the medical device industry is a very regulated industry, and the material that is used has to pass certain tests. So it has to ensure that you actually do a toxicity test, and you find that there's no local company that's actually able to supply material of that quality. Hence, you end up actually importing some of those material, hence increasing some of the input cost in actually both research and production. And the cost, and Tony touched extensively actually around the issues of regulation. So the cost of regulation, from actually setting up the quality management system to actually all the way getting the required approval, either being CE mark or FDA approval, also depending on which other countries you want to export in, you actually have to also ensure you comply with those regulatory requirements in those countries. So the CSIRs, in terms of, and as a result of this, all of these challenges, CSIR has actually been coming up with a strategy on how actually to assist the medical industry to overcome some of these challenges. And currently, I'm calling this the medical devices diagnostic framework. So as I'm saying, we're currently working actually on this framework and on how we can actually address support the industry in addressing some of those challenges. So looking at actually what I've just presented differently, so it's basically in generally how products find their way in the market. You'll actually have either a higher education institution or a local company or someone having an idea and they somehow actually do some research or even do some applied research experimentation to sort of mature the technology concept a bit. And then from there now there's actually this thing of actually taking that technology concept and developing it further into a product that can actually find its way into the market. So the skills that is sort of now required and the infrastructure that is required to actually now do product design, the prototyping, and in the medical device space being very highly regulated, you actually now need to do all the regulatory approvals, from setting up the required quality management system to actually getting all the necessary regulatory approvals from FDA to CE mark. And you actually find this is where most of the ideas and technology concepts fail, because there's actually now you need a different set of skills to take those ideas now to actually a product that can find its way into the market. So it's actually trying to address that weakness in the actual value chain of saying, when people have ideas, how do they actually, we support them all the way into actually developing products that can actually make their way into the market. So it's actually addressing that innovation challenge that's generally facing the entire national system of innovation in the country, but particularly looking at the medical device sector. So looking at, in terms of the framework, like I said, this is still a bit of work in progress, and we're working with the different partners to actually refine what the CSR role can be, also being influenced by what the local manufacturers actually need the CSR to do. So we currently, in terms of expertise that the CSR have, as Tony mentioned earlier, we actually have the product life cycle management software that we actually now have customizing for the medical device sector. So we're going to have a medical devices and diagnostic life cycle management platform, which I'll talk a little bit in the later slide. And then if you look at, in terms of the other offering and capabilities that we have a material development expertise. So we've developed already existing material, and examples is being that nano gas, microsphere. I'll only touch on a couple of these things due to time restrictions. And in terms of sensor development, we actually have expertise in nano macro sensor development, microfluidics, photonics, ultrasonic. And the ones I'm mentioning is where we actually have started working in the medical spaces. You also have other areas where actually they can find their way into medical devices, but we haven't actively started working in the medical devices. So because like in terms of advanced manufacturing, like robotics, 3D printing, all these technologies easily find their way into the medical device space. I'm only touching on those where we've actually already started working in the medical device spaces. So in terms of product development, we actually have a prototyping, various facilities that are able to assist with product development. We have the photonics prototyping facility, the microfluidics facility, also the ultrasonic facilities. In terms of regulatory compliance and requirements, as CSIR at one of our unit, MSM, actually has gone through the process of actually acquiring the ISO 13485 certification for both R&D and manufacturing, and we actually have a bit of experience in actually going through that process and actually acquiring the certificate. And in terms of manufacturing, if you are a small company and you are starting, you find, being in the medical space, you find that you actually, when you get to a point of where you need to actually do clinical testing, you need a couple of samples. So our facilities, even though we're currently prototyping, they're able to assist with low volume production, to actually assist, especially startups, with that low volume production to be able to do clinical studies. Even in some cases, if you want to supply maybe your first customers, to test the market, we are able to do that. And then also with the PLM, the platform, the medical device diagnostic platform, I will show how also it assists with the manufacturing aspects of the value chain, and then the after sale and support. And I think probably in the last 2 days you heard about the fourth industrialization and how everything is becoming digital. So obviously the technologies and the devices that are being developed and the sensors are becoming smarter, which actually bring the thing of you now having devices and sensors that need to be connected. That actually even changes how you offer after sale and support, because now you actually can have an ability to be able to view your devices in real time and see and sort of become more proactive on how you actually maintain the devices, because you are able to tell how often they've been used. So this is sort of in terms of the overall platform on how we see we can actually support the medical device industry, not only obviously ourselves collaborating with the different partners, and where we don't have strong expertise, we can actually call upon other people with strong expertise in that area. So in terms of the medical devices and diagnostic lifecycle management, it's actually a platform that enables the management of the different phases of the lifespan of the medical device. So from the concept all the way to the disposal. So it actually consists of four initiatives. So you have the PLM software, which actually integrates the different phases of your lifespan. So from your concept, when you're doing your R&D, you are testing the concept, you're doing a prototype, and in manufacturing, where you're now actually manufacturing and getting things into the market, you're packaging, advertising. So it integrates all those phases into one platform. And then taking the second one being your cloud-based and web application that actually allows for real time sharing and collaboration with different people or your collaborator. For instance, if you are actually a company, you don't have abilities to do electronics, but you're actually using another company that's actually doing, you're contracting another company to actually do the electronics for you, you are able to do real-time sharing of your updates in terms of if you updated your electronics, they're able to see immediately that you've updated. So when you now place, say, an order, they actually send you the right spec based on your recent updates. So this is sort of an example on how industry can also take advantage of the platform. And also in coding the regulatory requirement. I think Tony actually explained how expensive this could be. So if you have a platform that actually already comes with the ISO 13485 quality management system requirements encoded, obviously taking into consideration that there will be variation when it comes to product, because often how the product is classed, but you already, with the basic requirements, you encoding them in there, so that when people go through the different phases of the lifespan of the medical devices, they already know what the requirements are in terms of regulation, and to start fulfilling those early on in the concept phase, and not wait too late to actually start fulfilling some of those requirements. And we've learned with some of the devices that we've developed that if you miss some of the stuff in the beginning, you actually spend more money and time trying to actually redo some of the work. And then machine learning, so you have all these different databases that now have very rich information. Now you can actually start mining those databases and actually getting some useful insight on how you improve your product development and your manufacturing processes. Actually, in the long term, what this actually offers is that you actually end up reducing the time it takes for you to get products into market, and also just the cost of the product. Because if your production, the time it takes to actually do the product is reduced, it means you actually be able to reduce the overall product development cost and being able to get the competitive edge of actually getting the cost of the product low. And also another thing, going back to the whole connectivity thing, this also now, because this in the same platform, it also gives you that advantage of being able to monitor your devices in real time where they are on the same platform. So it actually takes care of the entire value chain from concept all the way to disposal. So it's actually a very rich platform once you actually start using it as a manufacturer or even as an R&D institute. So the second part of the presentation, I'll be actually talking about the examples of the technology platforms that we have that have actually started focusing on medical devices. Like I said, there's quite a plenty of technology platforms that actually can find application quite easily into the medical devices, but we not really have any products in those, like your 3D printing, but so I'm not going to be touching on those. So I'm going to be talking about 4 technology platforms here, and Tony also again spoke about point of care. So I'm going to actually just quickly say the 3 technologies that I'm going to be talking about in terms of point of care for the CSIR is the microsphere, photonics, and microfluidics technology platforms. So with the photonics diagnostic platform, really here the aim is to use light to sort of manipulate living cells at cellular, subcellular, and molecular level. And then really sort of, sometimes it's easy to think of what an example of a technology that uses the science, that uses photonics, and that quickly the one that comes into mind is your CT and MRI scan. They actually use photons at a certain wavelength, and that actually that allows is actually for you to to be able to view to make the body transparent, so that you're able to get very high resolution 3D imaging, so that you're able to see the human anatomy. So it's a similar principle, but here you're actually looking the way you can treat, and in this case you're actually looking at developing point of care diagnostics. And really the advantages of the technology is that it allows for cost reduction per analysis, and it allows for portable devices and also possibly equipment free, and it's generally low cost to manufacture. And as the CSIR, because we have the photonics prototyping facility that I mentioned earlier, and the skill, obviously, to actually be able to design, develop, and manufacture photonic-based point-of-care devices. So if you have a specific need for a point-of-care devices, and you think photonics can sort of, in the photonic space, you can actually approach the photonics prototyping facility and see if they can actually assist you as a small business. And an example of a device that the CSIR is currently working on in that space is actually an Ukukanya point-of-care device. This is actually to provide rapid HIV viral loading at the testing site. So this is the best site. So if an individual goes to the clinic, instead of the nurses taking blood sample and then taking it to the lab, where they're now going to have to do the viral load testing, and then after a couple of days take back the results. The idea is the nurse will do the test immediately and know what the viral load of the patient is, and then immediately be able to know what regimen of treatment to offer the patient. And the second technology that we're using in the point of care diagnostic is microfluidics, which is really where we're doing precise control of extremely small volumes. So we're talking about micro volumes here, and really here the idea is to if you look at in terms of your micro system technologies, your lateral flows and your cartridge-based system, they both have advantages and disadvantages. So the idea with this platform is saying we know lateral flows, although they're very low cost, they're not sensitive and specific enough. Cartridges, they're very sensitive and specific, but they're relatively expensive. So the idea is to actually take the best of the two microsystem and develop a platform, a device that actually, a platform that actually allows for you to actually fulfill the WHO assured principle, in the sense that you actually, the device is accurate, is sensitive, specific, and it's actually equipment free. And really, we feel that because the CSIR has a clean room and a microfluidics facilities, we feel that we well positioned as an organization to assist industry with actually the entire value chain from your research, design to manufacture and develop lateral flows cartridge and or cartridge-based system depending on your need for drug discovery, blood counting, and disease diagnostics. And then really the advantage of the facilities is actually one of the facilities that ISO 13485 certified. So actually from day one when they're actually assisting, they're already doing the design in line with the regulatory requirements. Also, because of that, they all have a total system view in terms of how the device will be actually used in a real environment, because to be able to do that, you need to actually, when you're doing the ISO 13485 requirements, you already need to understand the risk that the device is going to have when it's actually being used in real life. And being in the CSIR, they also have that advantage that there's different expertise and technology, so you're able to actually go and if you need 3D printing, you know who to go to immediately to assist with that kind of expertise. And like I said, we know the challenges if you're a small startup company and you've developed the technology and you just need a couple of samples to be able to do some clinical testing or to test the market, so they're able to offer some small scale manufacturing to assist with that transitioning phase of if you're actually starting maybe to start putting your production line in place. And an example of a device that is using the microfluidics technology is the diagnostic, which is currently, Ryan can correct me, currently going clinical studies, and the device actually does full blood count analysis. And then the third and last technology that sort of is classified as point of care diagnostics is the microsphere technology platform. So this is actually used mainly for, it's actually, this is one of the most matured technology in the space, because actually the company has been spin out to actually, out of this technology. So you actually now have an independent company outside the CSR that if you have a specific need, if a company has a specific need for actually a microsphere or microparticles for their particular needs, if it's like sample preparation, drug discovery, you can actually approach them and they're able to customize based on your needs. So if you have an application, point of care application, and you actually need some assistance, and they can actually customize based on your requirement. Like I said, the company has been spin out of this technology, and they've now done about 15 products using this particular technology. And so if you, like I'm saying, if now this is actually more of an independent company, those are still using CSIR as technology. So it's actually nice to actually have a company that has gone through the entire value chain and actually now selling to actually end users. So the last technology is more a sensor than a point of care devices. So it's so basically with the ultrasonic based devices, we are using sound waves to sort of view and manipulate the internal body structure. This is your typical Doppler ultrasound, but the specific focus here is actually looking at devices for the primary care market. So this is your clinic, so your first point of contact with the public healthcare system. So this is also one of the facility that does the ultrasonic based devices, actually one of the facilities that actually has ISO 13485 certification. So also if we have the expertise, if a company, a local manufacturer has an idea for an ultrasonic based application and they want assistance in actually developing further, we have expertise to actually to assist the company to do that. And then examples of devices that we developing in this space is AmbiFlow system, which is quite in its it's quite advanced, and it has gone through quite extensive testing, and with the recent study that we are finalizing in Mamelodi, where we've recruited over 3,500 patients into the study, and the results have really been amazing in that sense, that we've shown through that study that using this technology in a clinic, which is used for fetal health monitoring, we are able to reduce the number of stillbirth by up to 50% in Mamelodi. Hence, there's been an interest of actually to do a national demonstration in different provinces to see whether we can replicate those results. And if we could, it actually shows that the technology can actually be able to reduce 50%. So it's a technology that means if you take it to other sub-Saharan countries, you can actually reduce the number of stillbirth quite significantly. And the last technology, which we're still quite early stages, is CardioFlow system, which is for cardiovascular risk assessment. Uses a similar concept to AmbiFlow, but just slightly different in that it's for cardiovascular risk assessment. In conclusion, I feel, as a CSIR, we believe that working together with our partners, most of them sitting on the table, TIA, IDC, DTI, Summit, we are actually can be able to support the development and the growth of the local medical device industry. And then this is the end. In closing, let me quickly, Manfred, are you in such a hurry that I finish, that you clap before I finish? In closing, let me just thank people who contributed to the presentation: Patience, Isaac, Kevin, and Peter. Thank you guys for the contribution to the presentation.